I am talking to Serge Vanbockryck and Henry Pearman. Now, Serge, you wrote the remarkable 956 books, 2 volumes, incredibly well received, very highly regarded, and now we have 962, 3 volumes. Why 3 volumes?
It all comes down to simple mathematics. Of the 956, there were 11 works cars that were used between 82 and 84, and then into 85 a bit for development. And the 962 was launched in 84 and was used by the factory and factory supported teams in various shapes and forms all the way through 94. So of the 962 works cars, there were 19 cars built versus 11 956s, and they ran for 10 years and did many more races, quite successfully so. So starting with the 1984 IMSA model, which was launched at the Daytona 24 in 1984, and ending at Le Mans 24 hours with the GTized 962 known as the Dower 962, which again won Le Mans 12 years after the original 956 had won it for the first time. So very much making it the most successful Group C car and indeed thoroughbred sports car in automotive history.
For these books, you have done a remarkable amount of research. Can you give us a flavour of the depth of that research?
Well, I'm the kind of person who always, having a journalistic background, I'm the kind of person who always likes to know everything there is to know. And I always want to find a little nugget of information that you normally don't find elsewhere. So I've spent many days and hundreds of hours in the Porsche archives, digging up all sorts of stuff. And rather than just having the history of the cars with the race results, which is fairly easy these days with the internet, I've gone as far as collecting data on gear ratios, engine compression ratios, fuel consumption per lap, per car, per race, and per test. And all that is in very great detail, I think, in the book. So it's really become, from setting out to make a book on the history of the car, it's now, I think, become the ultimate work of reference for anybody interested in those cars.
Turning now to Henry. Henry, you're an arch Group C enthusiast. You've raced these cars, you've collected them, you're extremely knowledgeable yourself. You introduced us originally to Serge. Why is Serge the right guy to write these books, and why are they so remarkable?
Great thing with Serge is he's obsessive as I am on things being perfect and, attention to detail, if you like, really. And I met Serge in person the first time at 2004 at Le Mans, having already been introduced to him through Mike Cotton. And it was clear straight away this was the guy. He covered all of the in period for Luxembourg and Belgium, Holland, etc., from 1988 onwards. And he said he got drafted in his head about 1 million words against all the 956s and 962 histories. So I thought if we could just get him to focus on the works cars, there's a chance he'll be able to get something together, because it's always evolving, the history. And it's amazing how many interesting facts he's put correct. And there's lots of myths and misconceptions, which, I'm always obsessed on trying to clear up. And Serge has been the ideal detective to get a number of things that were hearsay and repeated in different publications, which Serge has been able to identify 100% the truth and the accurate facts.
Henry, you've seen the proofs of these books and now the published books. Are you impressed?
It's amazing. I mean, I think it's the book of the decade, which sounds crazy, but there's lots of books that are produced relatively quickly on specialist cars, but I've never seen anything that goes into the detail that this has got. There's so much stuff I had no idea was done. When you look at all of the different wind tunnel models, all the different diagrams, and you'd think that people later in the Group C era were coming up with new ideas, and you see that Norbert Singer had looked at it like 5 years earlier. So it's absolute incredible attention to detail and depth that Serge has been able to get together.
Can you just put into words why the 962 is such an important car, so iconic?
It's the world's ultimate sports racing car, to be honest. It's certainly, look at the 20th century, it's got to be up there as the most significant of all, certainly in Porsche's history. How many cars can you have with a 12-year life cycle that only weren't competitive because they had 150 kilos of ballast added and all their aero taken away? So, they would still have been competitive in the late 90s, probably. In fact, in the current historic Group C, we were pulling higher top speeds between the chicanes than the modern cars. So that's just how ahead of their time they were.
Turning back to you, Serge, where did your passion for these cars start? Where did it all come from?
Well, as I said earlier, I started out as a journalist back in the 80s during the Group C era, and it was, and it still is, the most successful era in sports car racing there's ever been. Everybody's always talking about the mythical 917, but I think that has as much to do with the iconic Gulf colors and with Steve McQueen's movie than with race results, because they only lasted for 3 years. But the 956s and the 962s in Group C in general was the pinnacle of sports car racing. I remember going to Suzuka where you had like 40 Group C cars on the grid. I mean, compared to today, that would be like 40 LMH or LMDH cars on the grid, whereas now you have like 5 or 6 or 7, and the rest are GT cars and smaller prototypes. And the Group C cars, and especially the Porsche, they had this absolute elegance to them. They just looked elegant. They were thoroughbred race cars, but didn't have all these winglets and turning vanes and all these aero stuff added to them. It was just a very sleek, elegant looking car. And Porsche, of course, as they've always done, they were the only ones to produce custom cars as well and sell them by the dozen, which meant that on an average Group C grid at the end of the 80s, like half of the grid almost were Porsches, all in various liveries, very colorful liveries of well-known sponsors, like the Rothmans cars on sponsorship on the Works cars. But also the Blaupunkt cars are quite famous, Repsol, Jägermeister, of course, the bright orange cars. So they were just attractive. And being a journalist during that era, working for several publications, of course, had access to all the teams and the cars, and I could describe them and make notes and everything. And it kind of evolved from there that maybe one day I should do a book about it. And then, of course, 3 decades later, here we are.
Doesn't do, as we say, to rush into these things.
Absolutely not.
Thank you, gentlemen. We at Porter Press are extremely proud to be publishing these remarkable books. They are truly amazing. 3 volumes, 1,400 pages, 1,800 illustrations. Absolutely extraordinary. The depth of research and the time and effort that Serge has put into these is absolutely amazing. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.